Hello again everybody, and welcome to part 3 of the unofficial OpenCV 3 and Windows 10 installation and configuration guide. And in this part we're going to cover the installation and configuration of Emgu CV, which is essentially a huge wrapper library that allows us to call OpenCV functions from within the .NET environment, and we're going to go through some examples in Visual Basic, and there's also some C# examples provided on the GitHub page. So let's go ahead and go to the GitHub page here. So OpenCV3 Windows 10 installation tutorial, and we'll download the cheat sheet here, installation cheat sheet 3 Emgu CV3 for Visual Basic.NET and C#.pdf, and then raw save as, and we'll go ahead and save that to the desktop and save and give it just a second to download. There we go, and go ahead and minimize that, and now we can open up the cheat sheet and start at the top here. So starting with step 1A, download and install Visual Studio 2013 or 2015 Community Edition. And step 1B, unlike the previous two cheat sheets where we were using regular OpenCV, which did not yet have precompiled binaries for Visual Studio 2015, at this time Emgu CV3 already includes precompiled binaries that will work with Visual Studio 2013 or 2015. So in this video, just to show 2015, which wasn't shown in the previous videos, let's go ahead and use 2015. So continuing on to step 2A, download the latest version of Emgu CV3 executable installer either with or without CUDA support. So that would be without CUDA support, that would be with, and then run the installer. Choosing all the defaults will work fine. I'll just give you a quick look at what that page looks like. Okay, so we're going to search for Emgu CV, and that'll take us right there. And then we're going to go to download and installation, and mouse wheel down to follow this link to the SourceForge page, and then Emgu CV, and then 3.0.0 or whatever the latest version is. And the first link here, let's see, that goes to a self-extracting zip. Probably better to use the installer. So if you're looking for CUDA support, this second item here would be the one to choose. That's the self-extracting installer with CUDA support. And then this third option here is a zip. That's really not necessary, easier to use the installer. And then this fourth option here is the installer without CUDA support. And as you can see, that's the most popular download. So you're going to want to download either that option or that option, and go ahead and install it. And then we need to edit the path. So we're on step, let's see, run the installer, choosing all defaults will work fine. So step 3A, add the bin x86 directory to the path for your version of Emgu CV. So I'll swing this over to the other screen here. We can minimize that. Bring up a file browser. Okay, so we're going to go to C, Emgu Windows Universal, and again, yours will say CUDA here if you have the CUDA version, so use whichever is applicable. Bin, and then x86, and then we're going to click up here and Control C, then right click on Start and go to Control Panel, and then System, and then Advanced System Settings, and then Environment Variables, and I recommend changing this lower option so that the path change affects all users, and then choose Edit and go all the way to the right, and then add a semicolon and paste in the location that we copied from just a moment ago. There we are, and then choose OK, OK, and OK. And since we just did an install and edited the path variable, at this point it would be a good idea to reboot. So I'm going to stop the recording for just a second. Okay, so our reboot's complete, and getting right back into the cheat sheet here. So step 4, from my microcontrollers and more GitHub page, decide which example you're going to use. So for each of the three examples, we have both the Visual Basic .NET version and a C# version. To keep the video down to a reasonable length of time, it probably wouldn't be a good idea or necessary to demonstrate both of all three programs. So I'll just do the Visual Basic versions, but if you're interested in the C# version, they're right next to each other, so that shouldn't be a problem. And the steps to assemble the form and so on, of course, and configure configure Visual Studio rather for the Emgu install are identical for each. It's just a matter of the syntax of the code, Visual Basic versus C# being different. So I don't think there'll be any concerns there for somebody that wants to use the C# versions instead. So let's go ahead and get to step 5, start Visual Studio, and I'm going to swing the cheat sheet over to the other screen now. And we're going to continue with step 5A, so close out of this, start a new project, so File, New Project. And then when that pops up, we're going to choose Visual Basic or C# as we prefer. So I'll do Visual Basic, and then we'll choose Windows Forms application. So let's see here, Visual Basic, and then Windows Forms application, and then name the project as you prefer. So for example, we'll call that Canny Still 1, and continuing on here, choose OK. I recommend unchecking Create Directory for Solution and add to Source Control. We're on step 5C of the cheat sheet if you're following along. So Visual Basic Windows Forms application, Canny Still 1. OK, we definitely going to want to change this to Visual Basic. So VB, and there we go. So Visual Basic Windows Forms application, Candy Still 1, C, Visual Studio 2015 Progs Visual Basic, and then uncheck those and then choose OK. And once it comes up, we're going to want to save the project once and give Visual Studio just another moment here. And then the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the name of the form to FRM main. It's better to change the name of the form now when there's as few references as possible. So go ahead and save it and then rename the form to FRM main, and it's going to ask us, do you want to update all references? Yes, of course we do. Okay, so now the next step is to go to project and then add reference and then browse, and then we're going to navigate to the Emgu bin directory, which well, kind of cheated from the previous time I was doing that. It's already there, but I'll just navigate to it so you know where it is. So C Emgu, Emgu Windows Universal, and then bin, and here we are. And at this point we're going to highlight all the DLLs except for the DLLs that apply to a different year Visual Studio. So since we're using 2015, we're going to highlight that one, skip 10, 12, and 13, then highlight that, and all those. And there we go, and then we're going to choose Add and OK. And we can go ahead and minimize that. And now we're going to go to Project and then Add Existing Item. And then we're going to navigate to C. Let's see here, C Emgu, Windows Universal, and bin, and then x86. And then we're going to change the viewable file type to all files, and then we're going to highlight all those DLLs, and then we're going to choose Add. And then in Solution Explorer, we're going to highlight all those DLLs we just added, and then we're going to go to the Properties window, and then we're going to choose change Copy to Output Directory to Copy Always. And continuing on, we're on to step 10 now. So if we bring up the toolbox, currently, let's go ahead and minimize this. There's these Emgu specific special controls up here, but those won't be there by default. So I'm going to go ahead and reset my toolbox. So reset toolbox, are you sure? Yes. Okay, so now those won't be there, and general will be at the bottom, and then there won't be anything in general except maybe pointer. And then I'll show you how to add these special Emgu controls. Okay, so the toolbox took just a moment to reset there, so I paused the video. So after unexpanding everything, here's what we have. General is blank. So continuing along in the cheat sheet with step 10, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure you're in the design view, so here with the form, which we already are, and then bring up the toolbox, which we've already done, and then we're going to expand general, which we've already done, and then we're going to right click on an empty area of general, and then we're going to go to choose items, and we're going to find, once this list populates, that image box is not going to be there. So here's this list populated, and we will find image box is not there. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit bigger, make things a little easier on us. HI, so as you can see, there's a few things here that mention image, but there's no image box. So here's where we're going to go to Browse, and then C Emgu Windows Universal, and then bin, and then we're going to double click on emgucv.ui.dll. So let's see here, emgu.cv.ui.dll. Yep, so go ahead and double click on that. And now notice that image box just appears here, and it usually checks itself. If it doesn't, go ahead and check it, and then choose OK. And now we have our 4 special Emgu controls over here. And so what I would suggest doing next is moving image box up to the top of those, And since you're going to use an image box on pretty much every single Emgu CV program you're ever going to do, I suggest moving general up to the top here so you have ready access to image box. And now we can continue on with step 11. So depending on which of the 6 examples we're going to do, so let's go ahead and pick our example here. So we'll go back to the microcontrollers and more page, OpenCV 3 Windows 10 installation tutorial, and I'll do Control F and type VB just to highlight the 3 Visual Basic programs. So let's do canny-still.visual basic first. So here's the code. Nice to read in this screen because it has syntax highlighting, but for copying and pasting, for sure we want to choose raw. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add these controls mentioned up here to our form. So let's go ahead and do that. And the first one is going to be a table layout panel. So let's see, we have the toolbox here, so containers, yes, there we go, and table layout panel, go ahead and drag that over, and then we're going to expand that, and let's go ahead and name them while we're adding them. So this first one, let's choose A for alphabetical order of properties. First one we'll name table layout panel outer, and again I'm just copying and pasting these out of the raw code I showed a moment ago. And table layout panel inner, let's see, that's going to go in the lower left, so put that down there, and then that'll be table layout panel inner. And button open file, so we're going to need to get a button that's in common controls. Here is the easiest way to get to that button, and then we're going to name that button open file. The next component, that's going to be a label, so we're going to choose, I must have passed it here, there we go, label, and we're going to place that there, and we're going to call that label chosen file. And whoops, I made a bit of a mistake here. Rather than doing things that way, let's move this down here a little bit. Instead, we should put the nested table layout panel in the top left, and then we're going to put the button in the top left of that, and then the label in the top right of the nested table layout panel. Okay, that's better. And then we're going to add an image box in the 2 lower boxes. So one there, and we're going to name that image box original. There we go. And then we're going to put an image box in the lower right quadrant as well, and we're going to name that image box canny. And then we're going to add a file dialog box. So let's see, file dialogs, where are dialogs? There we go. And open file dialog, and we can close out of tools now and go to properties, and we're going to call that open file. And now we can set our properties to arrange our form. Okay, so let's begin by expanding our inner table layout panel here a little bit, and the default font is awfully small for these buttons. Let's go ahead and label, so let's up that to 12, and let's resize the button just temporarily though. Then we're going to choose, let's see here, auto size true and auto size mode grow and shrink. Okay, now for the table layout panel here, we're going to choose auto size to be set to true. And now we're going to choose this drop down here, edit rows and columns, and we do not need the second row, so let's delete that. And for the columns, we would like the button to be as small as possible, so we're going to choose column 1 to be auto size, and then let column 2 take up the rest. And then we're going to choose for the nested table layout panel column span, there we go. And then for doc, we're going to choose fill, and that should work its way across. Okay, now we're going to highlight the 2 image boxes. And for, let's see here, border style, let's go ahead and give it a border, fix single, and then for doc, we're going to choose fill. And then I prefer to choose enable to be false. It's too easy to accidentally zoom out or in if you leave that set to true. And then for size mode, let's go ahead and choose zoom. That will change the image proportionally to fit the box as much as possible while still maintaining the aspect ratio. So now let's grab table layout panel outer and just kind of resize that a little bit on the form here. And now let's drag this over here so we can see the edge of the form. And let's see, scroll down here so we can see the bottom. That's better. Now we can see it all at once. So next we're going to choose the outer table layout panel, and we're going to choose edit rows and columns. And for the rows, let's see, we'd like row 1 to be auto size and row 2 to fill up the rest. There we go. And then we're going to do edit rows and columns again, and for the columns, actually those can stay 50-50, that's fine. So then for the button, let's go ahead and put in our button text. So that's going to be, let's see, there we go, text open file. And for the label, we don't need any text, but we do need to dock that so it fills. So dock, there we go, it fills across. And for the text align, let's choose left center, and we don't need any default text there. And that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and run the program and see how our form looks. Just a second here while Visual Studio compiles for the first time. Okay, we got an error because one of the form 1 references was not changed, so that's easy enough to fix. FRM main, and save it, and we can close out of Application Designer and go ahead and run it again. And there we go, and as you can see, there's our 2 image boxes and everything okay. Those don't resize with our form because I forgot to set a property. We need to go to Table Layout, Panel Outer, and then choose Dock and Fill. There we go, much better. And let's run it again. And there we go. Now everything autofills and resizes with the form correctly, so that's good. So now we can, continuing on with the cheat sheet here, we just did step 12 here. We used containers to place components. So for step 13, check the code for your chosen example to see which events are present, for example, a button click or a form load. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the code here, and I'll go ahead and maximize that, and you're going to see this is a relatively simple program. We just have the one button click, and that's it. So we don't want to manually enter that button click because Visual Studio won't respond to it correctly. So how we want to do that is click on the button here, make sure it's named correctly, button open file, that's good, then double click on the button, and that will start to write the button click event for us. And now we can go ahead and save that. And at this point, just giving a final double check to the form here. Actually, let's go ahead and make the form a little bit bigger. So we can go ahead and drag this over here like that now that we've got everything auto-sizing correctly. And looks like we're all set there, so let's dive back into the code. So again, referring back to the raw code, at this point we're basically just going to shoot down here and copy and paste everything that isn't in here already. Okay, there we go. So then we'll go ahead and paste in the top there. We don't need these blank lines. And then FRM main. Personally, I prefer putting these comment lines in here. Some people think it doesn't look as nice, but I think it makes it much easier to see where the functions begin and end. And then next is we're going to copy and paste in the body of the button file click event here. There we go. And so we're going to put that right there. And then we're going to back off of that and save it, and if I didn't forget anything, we can go ahead and run it. We don't need to put the image in a certain directory for this program because we can use the open file button to choose where the image is. So open file, and we'll go back to the desktop, and let's open image.jpg, and there we are. So we're all set. So that program was successful. So now going back to the microcontrollers and more GitHub page, we can now do the next program, which is cannywebcam.vb. So let's go ahead and close out of Visual Studio 2015 and go ahead and reopen it. While we're waiting that to open, we'll go back into cannywebcam.vb, or I should say go into cannywebcam.vb for the first time and then go into the raw code, and this is what we'll be copying and pasting out of. So referring back to the cheat sheet here, so we can go to File, New Project, and let's see, we're going to go back to step 5 now. So Visual Basic, Windows Forms application, and I'll just copy and paste the name out of the top of the raw code. And so we can do that. Canny Webcam 1, same location, those are unchecked, Windows Forms application, Visual Basic, and that's good. So continuing on with the cheat sheet, let's go ahead and rename the form first before any more references to it are created. The sooner you do that, the better. So we'll go ahead and save, and then right click on the form, rename, and paste in the new name. And again, I'm just copying and pasting out of either the cheat sheet or the raw code. Yes, we would like to update all references, of course. So now we're on to step 7. So we're going to go to Project, Add Reference, and then Browse. And then we're going to navigate to the Emgu Emgu Windows Universal and then bin directory, or we're already there in this case, so we're going to choose that DLL, that one, the 2015 since we're using Visual Studio 2015, and then all of those, and then choose add, and then OK. And now just following along with the cheat sheet, we're on to step 8 now. So let's see, project, add existing item, and then we're going to go to C, Emgu Windows Universal, bin, and x86, and show all, and then choose all those DLLs and choose add, and go ahead and save it. And then we're going to minimize these references here, highlight the 4 DLLs, and then we're going to go to properties and change copy to output directory to copy always, and then save it. And note that we don't have to repeat the steps to get the special Emgu controls in the toolbox. You only have to do that once, and then as long as you don't reset your toolbox, they're always going to be there. So let's see, that gets us through step 10. Now on to step 11. So referring to the raw code file for Canny Webcam, we're going to copy and paste the component names from here as we add them. So first is table layout panel, and this is a really simple form. It's just one table layout panel and then 2 image boxes. That's about as easy as it can get. So let's go ahead and resize that, and let's see, we're going to look for containers and then table layout panel, and let's go ahead and resize that. There we go. And then let's go ahead and rename that as long as we have it up. So table layout panel, and now we're going to put in the first image box original. So let's see, go up to the top here, image box, and then image box original. And now we're going to put in the second image box, so that's going to be image box Canny, and now we can change some properties to make our form how we'd like. So let's choose the drop down here for the table layout panel, edit rows and columns, and then choose rows, and we can delete row 2, and that's good. And let's just choose the table layout panel next, and we can go ahead and dock that so it fills. So dock and then center. And for the 2 image boxes, let's change the usual properties there. We don't need the toolbox open anymore. So let's see, we can change border style to fixed single, and we can change enabled to false, and we can change, let's see, we're looking for size mode, set that to zoom, and for both let's change dock to fill, and there we go. And now if we resize the form a little bit, and we should be able to go ahead and run the program, and it won't do anything yet, but our form should be complete. And okay, we got the same error, form 1 reference was not auto updated, so we can just manually update that. That's no problem. Form main, and close out of application designer, and go ahead and run the program again. And there's our form, and as you can see, the image box is nicely resized when we resize the form, so that's just how we'd like it to be. So let's see, close out of that, and so now the next step is to check what events do we have. So in this program we have a form main load event, and then process frame and update GUI, we can copy that in entirely. So the only event that we need to have the environment start for us is form main load, and the most straightforward way to do that, it's in case you're interested, if you click on a component, you can go to the lightning bolt here, and then you can pick, these are all events here, you can pick any event you like, but the default event, you just double click on the form, on the component rather, in the designer. So in the case of the form, if there's no space on the form to click directly on the form, you can just double click on the title bar up here, and then that'll start to write the form main load event for us. And we'll just go ahead and add a little bit of spacing. And now we can just copy and paste in the code from the raw section of the GitHub site that isn't there already. So we'll go ahead and put in the imports and comments at the top, and then we can delete that, those extra spaces there. And now we have some member variables and a comment line, so we can go ahead and paste those in, and we don't need those blank spaces. And then form main load, and let's go ahead and paste that in, and there we are. Okay, a little oddity there with the copying and pasting, bear with me here while I realign these. Okay, and now this is red underlined just because we haven't copied that function in yet, so that's the very next thing to do. So we're going to copy process frame and update GUI, there we go, and that looks pretty good. So supposing I didn't forget any steps, we should be able to go ahead and run it, and yep, there I am in my apartment, so that's all set. So now we can do the third program. Let's go ahead and close out of that and go back to the GitHub site, go back to the main page here. So OpenCV 3 Windows 10 installation tutorial, and we're now on to the third Visual Basic program, Red Ball Tracker. So then we'll go to raw, and by this point I'm sure the steps are getting pretty familiar here. So fire up Visual Studio 2015, back to step 5 of the cheat sheet, and just a moment here while Visual Studio loads up. And there we go. So now we're going to go File, New Project, and let's see here, Visual Basic, Windows Forms application. I'll go ahead and grab the name right out of the cheat sheet, Red Ball Tracker. Windows Forms application, Visual Basic, Red Ball Tracker, C, Visual Studio 2015 Programs, Visual Basic, uncheck those, and OK. And now continuing on with the cheat sheet, step 6, let's go ahead and resize the form and save the project. And then let's rename the form FRM main. Yes, we'd like to update all references. And now we're on to step 7, so project, add reference, and browse, and we're going to add that, and those. And that's all of them. Yep, okay, choose add. And now we're on to step 8, so we're going to go to, okay, we've got to choose OK here. Then we're on to step 8, minimize that. So then we're going to go to project and then add existing item. And then we're going to go to C, Emgu, Windows Universal, bin, and x86. And then we're going to change viewable files to all and then choose add. And then we're going to highlight all those DLLs, and then we're going to choose properties here, and then copy to output directory. We're going to choose copy always and save it. And now we're on to step 10, but we don't need to add the Emgu specific controls again, they're already there. Step 11, so now pertaining to the specific example we're doing, we're going to add the components. So we're going to add, and again, I'm just from the raw section here, from the raw code at this top section here, I'm just going to copy and paste the names right out of there. So let's see, and we can name them as we put them in. So if we go to, let's see, containers, and then table layout panel, and let's go ahead and make this a little bigger, and I find this easier if you have the whole form viewable while you're doing this. There we go. Of course, we can resize it later because we're going to use the layout managers to auto size everything for us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and name these here. So table layout panel outer, and then table layout panel inner is going to go in the bottom left. So right there, table layout panel inner. And let's see, then we're going to add image box original at the top left, so that's going to go up there, image box original, and then we're going to add image box thresh. Thresh is short for thresholded image, if you were wondering. Image box thresh, and then we're going to add the pause or resume button. So let's see here, button, that's easiest to find in common controls. Go ahead and place that there. Let's make this a little bigger, and that's going to be btn pause or resume. And let's see, next is going to be a text box, text XY radius. So let's see here, if we scroll down just a bit, and there we go, and we're going to put that right there and do that. And we don't need the file dialog box because we're getting images from the webcam, so we can go ahead and close out the toolbox. And now let's go ahead and set some properties here to get our form looking towards the final product. So we can go ahead and choose the two image boxes here and do doc fill, and then for border style we can do fix single, and then I always like to choose enable false and size mode zoom. And now let's see, for the inner table layout panel, well, first let's change the font size to 12 for these. 8 is way too small, and then we can resize the button a little bit here. Let's go ahead and delete the bottom row from the inner table layout panel because we only need one row. So we can go ahead and delete that and choose OK. And now for the text box, Let's see, there's some properties to set here. Word wrap, always like to set that to false. And let's see, multi-line, definitely going to set that to true. And then there's a scroll bars property, and we're going to set that to both. And then let's see, we need to make this fill, so we're going to choose dock and fill. And now we're going to choose the inner table layout panel, and then we're going to choose, let's see here, column span, and let's make that 2. And then we're going to choose dock and fill. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and save it. Every so often it's a good idea. So now we're going to choose table layout panel outer, and then edit rows and columns. And let's see, for the rows, let's say we'd like to have the top row take 80% and then the bottom row 20%. I think that'll be a pretty good split to show the XY locations and radius. Then for the inner table layout panel, let's see here, we would like the columns, we'd like column 1 to be auto size. There we go. And then for the button, we'd like auto size to be true, and then auto size mode to be grow and shrink. And then we can set the anchor property to left and right, so that'll vertically center it. And that's looking pretty good now, so we can set the table layout panel outer dock property to fill. And I think that completes it, except we didn't title the button here, or put the text on the button, I should say. So I'm going to type a space, then pause, PAUSE, then another space, and save it. And we can go ahead and make it a little bigger now that we don't need to really see the whole form in the designer. And let's just go ahead and run the program to test it. And that one reference did not update again. Not sure the cause for that, but it's easy enough to fix. Just type in FRM main there. And let's go ahead and run it again. And somehow I deleted the end sub there accidentally. Okay, let's go ahead and put that back in there. There we go. And we can close out of Application Designer, and there's our form. And let's check and make sure everything auto sizes, and there we go. Yep, everything auto sizes nicely when we move the form around, so that's good. So the next step then is to check our events. So go ahead and bring over the raw code here. So we have a form load event, and then we have process frame and update GUI, but we copy and paste that entire function in. And then we have button, pause, or resume click, so the form load and the button click. So if we double click, let's first make sure the form is named FRM main, yep, and if we double click on the form, and there we go, that started form main load for us. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of spacing here. And now we can go back to the design view, and we can make sure the button is named button, pause, or resume, yep, go ahead and double click on that, and that starts to write the button click event for us. And now it's just a matter of shooting down the raw code and copying and pasting everything that isn't in there already. So let's go ahead and copy and paste the imports and comments at the top. Then we can go ahead and delete those spaces, and next we're going to grab the member variables section, so go ahead and paste that in there and delete some extra spaces, and there we go. And now we can copy and paste in the body of the form main load event. So there we are, and now we can, it's only underlining this in red here because we haven't copied and pasted that function in yet. So that's the next thing we'll do, process frame and update GUI, and we'll go ahead and copy and paste that in right there. And let's see, just neaten up some spacing here a little bit, and then we're going to grab the comment line for button, pause, or resume underscore click, and now the body of that function as well, and we can paste that in right there. And let's just delete some extra spaces, and if I didn't forget anything, hopefully we are all set. And there we go. So as you can see, we're getting some pretty good detection there on our ball, and get a nice display of the XY position and radius, and of course we're drawing a red circle around the outside of the ball and then putting a green dot at the center of it. We're doing that consistently in all these programs, so you can compare them if you'd like to see the differences in syntax for the programs and so on. There we are. Let's just test the pause function. So I'm still moving the ball right now, but you can't see it, and then press pause, and I'm still moving the ball but you can't see it, and then press resume, and there we go. So everything tests great, and that concludes part 3 of this 4-part series. So in the next video, we're going to compile OpenCV from source, and then we're going to configure that compile from source with Visual Studio, and then we're also going to use OpenCV with Qt, and then we're going to write a Qt program with a graphical front end, and also making OpenCV function calls. So a lot to do in that next one, so I'm going to stop the video here, take a quick break, and I'll see everybody in the next video.